if I were an apartment owner and I was considering buying housing around a university like USC in an urban setting, what might be the appeal to that? Like, why, how, what would be the appeal to doing something like that? The upside.
Well, the upside in LA, because LA is subject to rent control, the upside would be when you're renting to students, they are vacating more often. And when a unit is vacated, it becomes decontrolled, and you can raise the rent to fair market level. In another environment away from a university where you're not going to get that big of a turnover, you could have tenants living in the same unit for up to 20, 30 years and only be able to raise the rent by, say, 3 or 4% when all your expenditures and overhead are probably, being increased by twice that amount. So in a rent-controlled environment, having housing near a university where there is more turnover is certainly more appealing than having it anywhere else in the city.
And what might be some of the downsides and things to consider before making the decision to get into student housing?
Well, you have to look at who you're renting to. Remembering my student years, there's some pretty wild parties in some of these apartment buildings, and I'm sure the damages to those units were much higher than there would be, or more rampant than there would be in buildings elsewhere in the city where you might have families or professionals living in the units. They're a little more little less wild.
So then, weighing the main pros and the main cons, if you're a developer and you're considering going into USC, do you see a pretty lucrative deal, or would you not get into it because of all the hassle?
Well, it all depends on what you mean by a developer. If you're a real estate investor and you're buying, apartment buildings near USC, or UCLA, or Cal State LA, or what have you, if you're a real estate investor, then I think the real estate market is pretty good. Especially if that's what you're going to do, is buy residential multifamily housing. If you're a developer, depending on what you want to do with the land, if you're going to build new apartments, you're going to have to pay relocation fees, or wait until those units are vacated to do whatever you're going to do with the building. There's no sense in turning those apartment units into condos, but building apartment units around a university setting is, I think, always going to be lucrative. The demand for housing around a university setting, the trends have shown nothing but escalation. So if you want, if that's the investment you want to make, then it's probably a very savvy one.